Aloha and welcome to the Hawaii Pacific Gerontological Society's monthly webinars. I'm Mapuana Ta'amu, chairperson of these webinars, and today we're going to talk about engaging in difficult conversations with Katie Ranney from the Mediation Center of the Pacific. Today's Thursday, December 19th. So if you have any questions for Katie revolving around conversations, whether it's about advanced healthcare directives, maybe funeral planning, any kind of conflict you have or with your patients or their families, Katie is here to answer those questions. So use the chat box that is available to you. It should be, if you toggle around your screen, a little, dashboard should pop up. And there's a chat icon. So use that chat icon or the Q&A. Chat box is preferred, but whichever one you feel comfortable with, please do send in your questions, your comments, your personal stories, anything you have to share. We appreciate that. All right, so before we get started with today's webinar, I wanted to do a shout out for next year. We are accepting renewals for membership. This is what the membership form looks like. We have a few different types of dues, some for kupuna 65 and older. There's some for 25 years and older. Maybe you're a student in college. Individuals 26 to 64, companies for 100. And if you are part of a company that is a member and you want to become a member as well, you can be an associate member for a reduced price and fees. So this year in 2020, well, I guess next year, 2020 is our next biennial conference. So being a member during conference years is very beneficial due to the discounted costs, not just as an individual, but as an organization as well. So more information on that will be coming out. If you are interested in membership, we also provide monthly newsletters that are filled with age-related news, events, activities, announcements, not just on Oahu, but on the outer islands as well. We do these monthly webinars presented by professionals, and they are free to the members of HPGS, but also your friends and family. We're going to record this webinar and it'll be on our website. So you can check more of our archives from all of our 2019 webinars at hpgs.org. We do quarterly general membership meetings and other events throughout the year to bring our members together. Next one is January 23rd, which is a Thursday. We proudly offer scholarships for anyone of any age pursuing education in the field of aging. We do have certified nurse aide scholarships. I believe we have maybe 2, maybe even 4 available for $500 scholarships, and you can be of any age going into a CNA class. More information on our website. Our website also provides a bunch of resources of news, events, membership updates. If you need to know when our next webinar is, it'll be there as well on hpgs.org. So please think about renewing or becoming a member for 2020. And if you do so, this is our website, hpgs.org. If you go to that top navigation bar, membership tab, it'll take you to this screen, which talks more in depth about what we offer to our members. And then at the bottom here, there's that membership form that you will click. It's a PDF, or you can do it online, whichever suits your fancy. But that's how you sign up for a webinar. That's how you sign up to become a member. And back at the homepage here, we have our webinar tab. So after this, about a week from now, this webinar will be here archived on our website. So you can check here for upcoming, past webinars, and register here too. We have all the links. Cool. So let's get down to business. We are here today to talk about difficult conversations, mainly in the family realm, whether you're caring for children and you have family disputes, or for kupuna, or for, I guess, anyone of any age, really. When you have difficult conversations with family, it's difficult, right? So Katie Ranney's here to talk about that today. We're so happy to have her here. Catherine Katie Ranney is the Special Programs Coordinator for the Mediation Center of the Pacific, which is a nonprofit corporation that serves over 6,000 people annually through direct mediation and dispute resolution processes. She coordinates training, outreach, and special program management, including the Kupuna Pono program for elder mediation and family conferencing. Ranney has been involved with conflict management and resolution for 13 years, mostly as a facilitator, helping groups of people find agreement. She also teaches classes through the Matsunaga Institute of Peace at University of Hawaii at Manoa. She graduated with a BA from Santa Clara University and earned her master's degree in communication with a conflict resolution certificate from UH Manoa. So Katie, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here and to be able to talk with all of you about this very important topic. Hopefully you will get some skills at the end of this and be able to have something that you can really apply in your life when it comes to these sorts of conversations. So the Mediation Center started the Kupunapono program because of the increasing aging population in Hawaii. And, excuse me. And so we wanted to meet a community need of really reconnecting the kupuna with the rest of their family. And part of this is helping people have these very difficult conversations around the end of life, around long-term healthcare decisions, around some of those sticky subjects that we don't really plan for. And yet we do plan for, we do plan for a lot of our earlier stages of life. We plan for kids, we plan for school. I mean, we even plan for retirement, which is going up a little bit later. And we talk to people around us when we're planning for our next job. We talk to them, what are our cons, what are we considering? Is it a location move? Or we talk to people about our vacations coming up and whether we're planning to go on a cruise or something else. We do all of this planning and we talk to the people around us who will be our emergency contacts, who will be traveling with us. But we tend to avoid talking about elderhood. We avoid talking about death and end of life. However, planning for those later stages is just as important as planning for any of these earlier stages, and it's important to talk to people about it. Because if you don't talk to people, if you don't talk to your support network, if you don't talk to those who will be walking this path with you, and you don't create a plan, it's really just a recipe for conflict. People will have unstated expectations, and then when those unstated expectations are unmet, that's where the conflict happens. That's where the tension happens. And conflict is not necessarily a bad thing. Conflict is more of an opportunity for growth. It's an opportunity for learning if it can be managed well, if it can be approached in a right way, in a more non-adversarial way, that you can actually turn that conflict into the growth, into the learning. And there are a couple of ways that you can do that. But first, I really want to, congratulate you all for being part of this and really wanting to learn how to engage in those difficult conversations, because clarifying those sorts of expectations really takes a great deal of courage. It's a lot easier to just hope everything's going to turn out all right and then react when something happens. But that almost never ends up with the best possible solution. It's usually increased stress, increased disagreement, and a breakdown in communication within families if you wait until the last moment. But if you have a plan, if you steel yourself to having that courageous leap into a well thought out conversation beforehand to create a plan, then you have something that will help you with decision making, that will help you when you need to talk to somebody in a time of crisis or in a time of need, because you'll already have set up those mutually agreeable set of expectations to work off of and to grow from. So right here, we have our key ingredients for a successful family conversation. We've got a interesting acronym to help remind you that it's all about talking. So you're taking time to prepare. You're always being honest, patient, and flexible with the other person. You're trying to listen and listen for understanding and keep talking. That's why we have this acronym, TALK. Don't give, and always follow up afterwards. It's going to be difficult in the beginning, especially if you've never had to prepare yourself for a conversation before. It's going to be awkward in the beginning. If you've never had discussions about long-term health care, there's going to be that feeling inside of like, oh no, I don't really want to do this, but it has to happen. So one of the best ways to help get through that is to just keep going, and to keep using these tools and techniques over and over again. Now my presentation isn't going to go exactly in the order of TALK, just because they overlap so much, and because by doing one thing, it'll help you to do another one. But the main sort of strategy that I can give you is to prepare. And in order to prepare, you're probably going to take up this much time preparing for the conversation, and then the conversation will take this much time. But it'll be so useful for you to put all that time into it, to think about what are your goals? What are you hoping to accomplish? What would be the best thing to happen? What would be the best thing that you could achieve from this conversation with your sister, your brother, your auntie, your mom, your kids, grandkids, whoever it is that you're talking with? What would be the best outcome from this specific conversation that you're trying to engage them in? So if really all you're trying to do is bring up the topic of assisted living, and saying that maybe is something that should be considered, and that is an option that really be researched into, stick with that one topic. What would be the best result from your conversation to talk about assisted living? Would it be that they do some research into this? Would it be that they even think about that as an option? What really is your ideal outcome? And then if that isn't going to happen, what would be some of the other outcomes that could happen? And really setting yourself up for like, what is my goal? What is my goal with this conversation? What am I actually trying to accomplish? So that if things get into baggage from the past, or trying to veer the conversation off into yourself, like they start criticizing you as a person, or you start thinking about them as like, oh, they're this bad person who's just blocking my way for trying to do what's best for dad, then that is off of your goal. So if you keep your goal in mind, then that is really going to help you when you structure the rest of your conversation. And then the next step of preparing, so if you know your goal, make sure that you can self-assess, right? You're going to self-assess, and you're going to put yourself in charge of you. Reflect back on who you are, what your hot buttons are. Put yourself really in charge of what are your triggers? What are some of the things that are really going to make you blow up or shut down? And then think about ways that you can counteract that. Can you feel it coming? If you can feel it coming, what can you do to sidestep it so that you don't have that visceral reaction in the middle of an important conversation? Also know about the other person as well. How do they react to these things? What are they sensitive about? What are some good ways of calming them down? What has worked in the past? What is their schedule like? What is your schedule like? Have you had enough sleep? Are you picking a place that is really supercharged? Is it, in like the family room? All of the arguments you've ever had in your life take place. That's probably not the greatest place to do it. You need some place that is very comfortable, both for both of you or for the whole group if you're getting your whole family together, and really know like, what is the right place for this? What is the right time? And are people in the best mindset that they can be? If you're in a stressful situation, if you have a bunch of things going on, one's going to be the best, but trying to get them to be the best that they can. They've had a bit more sleep, get food on the table, those sorts of things to help make it be as comfortable as possible for everybody. The topic's going to be difficult enough. Don't make the air conditioning be the thing that distracts it. This is going more into like really, really, truly doing that reflection. Reflection on yourself, reflection for the other person. Concerns, feelings, emotions, triggers, what your attitude is, what are some fears, what are the other people's goals. If you know all of these things, if you can get yourself so that you can even just think about a little bit about like, how are they going to react? And then you can bring yourself and list ways that you can counter that. And I would say if you've never done something like this before, if you've never done sort of that emotional inventory, really write it down. Like, make yourself an actual list. Put it into words instead of just trying to think about it. Like, actually put it into words. It'll help to clarify a lot of things. Or have a trusted person who's not involved with that conversation, somebody who is outside of it, that you can really talk to them about. Talk to them about this. Because once you go through about like, man, this is getting me really upset. You know, I don't even know why, but every time I start to talk about it, like I can feel my heart beating, and it really gets me revved up. I wonder why. Think about what's going on. Why is it that this one topic is getting you so engaged with it to the point that you'll probably say something that you didn't mean to, which is going to derail the whole conversation, or you'll shut down and all of the talking will stop. And remember, with the K, you got to keep talking, because once you stop talking, then you can't get any new information in, and you can't share any of your feelings or any of the information out. But this is all part of that, really taking the time to prepare yourself for what's going to happen and what that conversation might do. Looking at what are some of the outcomes, how are you going to react in those, how are they going to react in each of one of those options, and what can you do to keep the conversation on task, on target, and continue to come to an actual resolution. So that was a lot of information right there. If anybody has any questions so far about taking that time to prepare and what that's going to look like, we've got the chat box, so you're welcome to type in there if you've got any questions about anything that's happening so far. I'll give you a little time to like get that typed in. So all right, so it doesn't seem to be anybody's got any questions so far, but the chat box is there. You can have it out to everyone, and I believe that you can also have it out to just us. If you just want to talk to me, if there's something that you want to ask very specifically about, and I can answer in slightly a more generalized way about that. Most likely, because I've done this presentation before, most likely you have a very specific conversation with very specific person or group of people that you want to have this conversation with, and that's what you're trying to learn about right now. So if you want to ask questions about that, you're very welcome to. But since nothing's popped up, I'm going to keep on going. And so once you've prepared yourself emotionally, strategically, you've got yourself prepared, think about what would be the best place to have this conversation. And really, you probably know the most about that. You know what your family culture is. You know, is it better if we're face-to-face? Is it better if we're side by side working on something? So if it's one of those things where you're putting together, gyoza at the kitchen table and everyone's focused on a task, and that's when the conversation can happen, because that's when the family culture, this is the time for talking, then make sure you set it up like that. Don't do anything too wildly different. You want to make sure that people are comfortable with it. Is your family or the person that you're talking to early risers, or are they more night owls? When do they have the most energy? That's a great time to really connect with them and get them in a space where they have the resources to engage in that conversation. Try to get to a place where you won't be interrupted. And that you will be able to fully have the conversation and be able to talk freely. For some people, go into a restaurant where everything else is loud and you can talk with somebody and it's sort of that private public space, that works. For other people, that would completely shut them down. They don't want anyone else to hear about what their business is. And so it's really choosing and making sure that what you learned from your emotional inventory before of the other person and of yourself, where then would be the most comfortable place, the place that would encourage the most talking, that would encourage the best feelings with it. It looks like we have a question.
Yes, so Katie, someone is asking in regards to face-to-face meetings, what is some advice when family members live in remote locations?
That is always difficult, especially here on the islands. We generally tend to have family here, family on the continent, family in the Philippines, family all over, right? I would say for that, if you can video conference, that's the best. You can see people's faces. You can read a lot of the nonverbals, which I'll talk about a little bit later about how important the nonverbals are. So if you can video conference, that's the best. As far as setting up the right stage, a lot of it will kind of come down to math. So if everyone's in a different time zone, finding the one place where everyone's kind of okay, you will have to make some considerations, right? You're trying to find the best for the situation that you have. It may not be like objectively the best, because when dealing with families, everything is subjective, because it's what fits with your family culture. So just finding a point wherein the time zones work out semi-nicely, if you can do it. Generally, if you can prepare yourself and put yourself into the right headspace, then you can plan it so that you might have to be the one that wakes up at 5 a.m, as opposed to the other people who won't have this information and won't have prepared themselves and are just kind of entering into the conversation. So I will say video conferencing would be the best. You can see them, you can talk to them face to face. If that technology is not available or is a little too far out for everybody who's involved, try to get them on the phone. Try to get them so that you're actually talking to them. Email and text message should be your last resort. You can use email for certain factual things. You can use email for scheduling. But when it comes to having emotional conversations, it's just so easy to misinterpret. It's so easy to take things out of context. And it's really easy to then also bring back old conversations where if someone's changed their mind, but they'll bring back the old conversation with whatever their first thought was and say, well, you said this though 3 months ago. And they're like, okay, well, I don't think that anymore, but you said it and you wrote it down. Like there's a lot of that can come into it. So, and text messaging, even worse. Because we're used to doing text messaging as something that's kind of off the cuff. And you tend not to put a lot of thought and editing into it. It's actually very difficult to edit your text messages. just because it's on such a small space. So I would put those ones kind of at the bottom of the list. Video conference, phone calls, much better because you can really connect with the person. You can hear them, you can see them, and that really helps to interpret how they're taking the message, so that you can go back to your preparation list and be like, okay, well, it seems like they're shutting down. What did I say I could do? What are some options that I had listed out for when they start to shut down? Oh, okay, I can do this. Okay, so let me try this. Let me try to get it from another angle. Let me throw in some humor to lighten it up a little bit. Whatever it is that they need to do to help them really engage with your conversation. And you don't have control over where they're going to set up, where they're going to be on the phone. But if you hear a ton of noise in the background, just stop them. I think it's really important that we have this conversation, but I'm having a really hard time hearing you. It seems like there's a lot of stuff going on. Maybe we can reschedule it for when you're able to be on your own, or when there's less distractions around. Let's try to schedule this for tomorrow or the next day, and try to schedule it pretty soon so that you can still keep your flow going and keep your rhythm going, and make sure that you're in a safe and comfortable place. This is for the remote conversations. If you're on the phone, it's the one time when I would say don't bring food to a conversation. Every other time, food is great. Food connects people together. It really helps to bond people. Over the phone, it's the most annoying thing in the world. So trying to alleviate like any of those annoyances would probably be good. So
there's another question about holidays. A lot of families get together during the holidays. Is that a good time, or should we save that for a separate occasion?
So the holidays are always very tricky. Because people are there for a celebration. If this is the only time when everyone's going to be together in the same place, if people have booked flights so that they're coming in so that you can actually have a face-to-face conversation, warn them. Warn them that you're thinking of having this, it's great that you're going to be able to see them. We want to have a wonderful celebration. We want to have this holiday time together. But you want to carve out a time in that when you're going to have this important conversation, when you're really going to address certain important things, so that they will not be caught off guard, that they'll actually be able to prepare for that conversation. The worst thing in the world is I'm going to keep it secret, and then at the dinner table, when everyone's just chatting about their life, I'm going to be like, so we need to talk about caregiving. And like everyone's going to be thrown off. The mood is going to completely shift. It's really choosing the right time. And it is about making sure that they're mentally prepared for it. Like, I don't want to catch you off guard. I want you to be prepared for this. I want this to be a comfortable and good conversation so that we can really make good decisions, or that we can really start the conversation. If none of this has happened before, if all of the conversations have been like short and then done, say you want to start planning. You want to make sure that you understand what you're supposed to do. What are your responsibilities with the family? And you really want to talk about what people are available for, what they're able to do, by putting it into terms that are a little bit more comfortable, that show that you're willing to listen. People will be way more inclined to engage with that conversation. And that's actually something that we're going to be talking about next. So let me get that. Yeah, so these conversations are all about balancing independence and safety, right? For the kupuna in the situation, for whoever it is that you're talking about. Even if you're talking about yourself, if you're wanting this conversation because you want to talk about your long-term health care plans, which is fantastic, and we really want more people to have these plans ahead of time when they're the one that's involved with the decision making, that they're the ones that's saying, this is what I want. Fantastic. You are still balancing your own independence with your own safety. Most of the time these conversations come up as caregivers talking about a kupuna that needs care for. So you're finally getting into the conversation. Again, learning, listening, so powerful. There are so few people these days who are truly listened to. And there are so few people who truly listen. Not listening to respond, but really listening to understand. And if you can master the skill of listening, it is amazingly powerful, right? So starting off conversations, especially in the very beginning, but even if you're in the midst of some sort of decision going on, if caregiving has been happening for a while and the primary caregiver is getting burnt out, and you want to start a conversation about, like, how can we split up responsibilities, or do we need to hire somebody? These are really good starting points as to how to start the conversation starters, right? I really want to talk about such and such a thing. I want to talk about how mom is going to get the best care. And I'd really like to hear your point of view on it. I really want to hear your thoughts on like dad's condition, what his diagnoses are, and how that's manifesting. I have some ideas about assisted living or having a nurse come into the house, but I really want to like bounce some ideas off of you on how that would work out, and hear what you think about it. Saying you're concerned about certain things, but you really want to talk about it. It's inviting them in. It's saying that you don't have something set in your mind. Even if you do, even if you have the solution, which is obviously the best solution ever, you might be surprised on what they'll say. So even with all the preparation, really try to learn their perspective. Really try to listen and ask about their perspective. Try to understand. And listen for what's really important. Listen to their emotions. What emotions are they having? And listen to their actual concerns. So not just, well, I don't think that grandma should ever go into assisted living. She should stay at home and that's it. That is one thing to listen to. But really what you're trying to listen for is why. Why do you think grandma needs to stay at home? Why do you think assisted living isn't the best for her? Because if you listen to those whys, that's going to get you far deeper, and you'll be able to formulate solutions that maybe neither of you had really thought about, but satisfies the why for both of you. You're thinking that grandma needs medical care, and she needs it at a more consistent and professional level than you're able to provide. But your sister thinks that grandma wants to stay at home, and that's all she's ever wanted, and she said explicitly to her in a conversation that she wants to stay at home until she dies. That may have never come up in your conversations with grandma, and so listening for it really gets you involved, and really you can really find out what needs to get fulfilled, and what needs to happen. Maybe it's talking to grandma again. Most likely it is, to find out where she is right now, what she thinks about right now, if that's possible. And asking them questions to really show that you're listening. It seems like you're getting really exhausted with caregiving. How can I help you? What can I do to be a little bit more helpful? You are exhausted, with caregiving, but every time I offer a ride, you say no. What else can I do? How else can we get this to work? So it's asking those questions, and really listening for why. Why do they say why do they want the thing that they say that they want? It'll give you a lot more clarity. And finally, when you're sharing your own concerns about things, try not to put judgment into it. Try to use I statements. I know that's been popular since the 80s, but it really does work. I feel this way when this thing happens, or when a behavior happens. It's definitely not, I feel frustrated when you don't clean up after yourself, or when I feel frustrated when you're such a slob, because that's not really an I statement. I feel frustrated when the dishes are left unclean from last night after I've cooked a dinner because it shows to me that you don't appreciate it. It shows to me that you don't want to pitch in, kind of a thing. It doesn't actually show that, but that would be the conversation that comes out to you. Really rely on your preparation for keeping yourself calm. Ask questions, ask deep questions, things that are open-ended rather than just yes or no. And be prepared to be creative, to think outside the box, to have things not go exactly the way that you thought they would, but because you prepared your emotional inventory, because you've prepared yourself some techniques, that you're able to really move on and move forward.
Katie, we have a question asking, are there resources that maybe you provide or that you know of in the community that can help with creating your emotional inventory?
For creating the emotional inventory, not really. Most of the time, sorry to say that, we provide services for helping you have that conversation. So we do help out with, so our Kupuna Pono program, we do family conferencing, and that helps out with the your main goal, what kind of outcomes, what are the things that you want to discuss. We'll talk you through that. But as far as having that, specifically that emotional inventory, I would say look at the questions. So check out, go back to this webinar after this is done, go to that slide, pause it, write down those questions and just kind of answer them one after the other. That will actually really help and will give you a good starting point. I am sure places like Kokua Mau and other organizations and partners with HPGS have certain things about conversations. They'll usually be talking about it as far as advanced healthcare directives and that sort of a thing. They probably have some tips as well to help you really do that self-reflection. You can also talk to a counselor and a psychologist, psychiatrist. They will help you go through that. If it's somebody that you talk to already, let them know that you're thinking about having this conversation and you really want to make sure that you're getting it, that you're going to get it right, and have them go through an emotional inventory with you. They are trained to go out and help you with that. But yeah, definitely, at least at the very first, go through the questions that we have there. It might be more revelatory than you think, just those simple questions. And if it leads off into other things, continue that flow down and try to really dig down into what some of the core is. Yeah. This is just a reinforcement of checking your nonverbals. Make sure you're not closed off. Make sure that you're trying to be open. Talking like this with your body turned away from somebody doesn't really, kind of shows that you're not really interested in the conversation or you're becoming defensive. If you see them doing that, take a pause. Oh, it looks like this is getting you really tense. How can we address that? This is an important topic and I really want to be able to address it, but you seem to be kind of shutting down or shutting off from this. What's wrong? What's going on? And take a pause from the topic itself to address the person and what they're going through. And also, everyone knows the difference between all right and all right. Take that into consideration when you're both saying things and when you're both listening to the other person. And this goes to our A. Be patient, be supportive, really show that you care about the other person. You care about the kupuna that you're talking about, and you respect them. You respect their opinions, and you want to have the best solution. So you're really thinking about that goal at the end, right? You really want to get the best solution. You really want this to be something that works, right? What is that outcome? What is that goal? And focus on that, and show compassion to the other person because they haven't had all the prep that you did. They maybe haven't even been thinking about it that much. Or they're not as connected with themselves as you will be after that emotional inventory. So they don't even know why they're reacting to the way they're reacting. And you can be the one that helps them. You can have empathy for that ignorance that is derailing the conversation and help to kind of bring it back into a space. This also goes for if you're talking to the kupuna themselves. If they have some diagnosis of dementia or just some sort of chronic illness, have compassion for what that illness is doing to them, and what place they're in right now. Where are they emotionally? Where are they psychologically? Are they feeling guilty, or are they feeling shame, or are they feeling like they're losing their power? Because that's such a big thing, that when you're losing your power and you're feeling powerless and you don't have any agency, how can you have this conversation to really give back that agency to them? By listening to them, by asking them questions, by really trying to understand them. They're then put into a position of power. So if they're feeling powerless, that's something that you can really do. And all of this will work, but there are some times when it's just too difficult. The baggage has gone on for too long. The grudges are still there. You've tried to prep yourself, but they just keep pushing the buttons or you just, you've done your emotional inventory, you've tried really hard, and like, it just doesn't seem to be working out. Or you've prepared yourself, and then you just can't make that last step, that last, like, I'm going to have the conversation. You're having a hard time just breaching that. There is outside help that can help you with the conversation itself. So you still should do the emotional inventory yourself, and having those times of reflection. Excuse me. But when it comes to the conversation and actually going through with it, if you're like, it's great, I've filled out my emotional inventory, I have all of these like coping mechanisms for when I get too heated, but I just can't stop myself from just talking and running over this person. You can try and get some outside help. So there is a couple of different people who can help. Nurses and doctors help with this a lot, probably nurses more so. Case managers or social workers, they can be provided through your health insurance provider or through different organizations, or even sort of senior centers can also help out with this. The Lanakila Multipurpose Senior Center through Catholic Charities has some good programs and good places of bonding and stuff like that. Helping Hands, different places like that. Also case managers, if you just have a case manager or social worker through some sort of private company, this is one of the things that they do. They're there to kind of help families talk to each other. They could be the person that you bounce these ideas off before you enter into the conversation as well. There's also child and family services where they have an honoring kupuna focus, so they help out with the elder issues. And then also us, the Mediation Center of the Pacific, and our Kupuna Pono program. Because I know most about it, I'm going to talk a little bit about what our program does. We do family conferencing and mediation. So family conferencing is bringing the whole family together. You call us to start one up. You give us the contact information of the rest of your family or support network. If there's a best friend who is going to be part of this, and the whole family knows that they're going to be part of this long-term healthcare planning, that they're going to be there and being supportive and driving people and making decisions and that sort of a thing, they can be part of it too, even if they're not related by blood. And we go out and we call all of those different people, schedule a time to bring everyone together, and we talk to them about what are your concerns? What are some things that are on your mind? What are you going through right now? And we create an agenda, and we send it out to everybody who's going to be participating in that family conference. And the agenda can include anything like living situations, care and support, financial concerns, trusts, end-of-life wishes, advanced healthcare directives. If you want to talk through the whole advanced healthcare directive, like one by one, and talk about it with the family. Anything along those lines. It all can be addressed. We generally block off about 3 hours for it. If you need to do multiple sessions, that's fine. If you're talking about a lot of different things. We also talk about diagnoses. We give you the space to talk about diagnoses and what that means as far as the needs for the kupuna. And then this all gets written up in notes by the facilitators. We usually have 2, one male and one female. and then the notes get written up, and then they get typed out and sent to everybody who was part of that family conference. And it's a way to create a plan. Next steps. Who's taking responsibility for what? Who's going to research different options? When are they going to get it back to the family? When is a conversation going to happen again about whatever the option is? Whether it's things like, how are we going to get our kupuna to the doctor's appointment? Is someone going to be able to drive them? Are they able to take Uber by themselves or a taxi? Is that something that's an option? All of those things, and it can be things that are considered, and then decisions can be made, and then they're written out so that you can remember what got talked about and what the decision was. And during our family conference, we make sure that everybody participates, but really the main values with this, it's respect, it's empowerment, it's delivering that sense of autonomy and agency, and it's really focused on the values of the kupuna, the values of the elder, because this is their life, and it's really developing a plan that supports those values, and that supports the strengths of the family. What are you really good at? What is the tie that binds you all? And by focusing on those strengths, you can build on those strengths, and it makes whatever decisions come later easier because you have those strengths to fall back on. And then if a decision needs to come up that you didn't even think about, you have the values, you've had the values conversation that could be a guide for decision making when it comes later on. We also discuss concerns, identify resources for certain things, and really develop a plan and clarify what people will do next. This is my last slide, and I really want you to focus on these things sort of above all else. When you're having these conversations, these difficult conversations, come from a place of love. I know it's there. Try and show that it's there. And I really want to congratulate all of you preemptively for having these conversations, because it takes a great deal of courage. It takes a great deal of strength. And it really takes someone who has a good character and strong spirit to be able to engage in these conversations, to have the wherewithal to start this, to be part of this, and to actually be proactive and take life by the reins and say, yes, I'm going to engage in this. It's going to be difficult, but I'm going to prepare myself, and I'm going to have this conversation, and we're going to work on it together. It takes a great deal of courage. So I applaud you already for taking those steps. And just remember what the benefits can be from these difficult conversations. It can create better support for caregivers. It can strengthen your family relationships. Having those good conversations where things actually come out of it makes the family more cohesive and comes together. And since it's really about long-term healthcare, since it's really about quality of life, it really improves the present and the future of the kupuna. So that is that is everything that I have to say for right now as part of this. If you have additional questions, now that we've kind of come to the end of this, you can put it into the chat box, and I will be very happy to answer them. Specific questions, general questions, clarifying questions, you go right ahead.
Yep, personal stories, comments, anything is appreciated. Do use the chat box. But before we get into questions, do you want to talk a little bit about your background and how you came into this field? Because this is not an easy field to go into.
Yeah, sure. So my background is in conflict resolution. I have been part of social justice advocacy and conflict management for more than a decade now, both studying it. I got my master's, like she said, in communication, and then and conflict resolution. And I became part of the Mediation Center about 2 years ago. And that was when I learned more about the specific needs of my home, Oahu, because I grew up here. And there were a lot of things that I was not aware of before. But by being part of the Mediation Center, we do a lot of different things. So we do domestic, but we also do, so that's like divorces or separations and couples and that sort of thing. But we also do like landlord-tenant, neighbors, and then our Kupuna Pono program. And so being part of the center got me deep into these kupuna issues. And so I just learned as much as I could in order to really truly understand and to be part of this and to have to be able to support this program as well. Because once I got into it, I 100% believed in it. These are important conversations. These are things that need to come up. I was very lucky in that both of my grandmas were very comfortable with this topic, and that they were very straightforward when they were talking about their wishes and their needs. We were all very clear about what their values were, because they had those conversations with us on a regular basis. And so we were really able to, when it came time to make the decisions, our family was able to come together. My dad was the one who had power of attorney for his mother. And I saw the responsibility that he took on from that, but I also saw how, knowing that my grandmother was a devout Catholic woman, that she had these values of love and support, and that the thing that she would have wanted most of all was for our family to come together and to love each other and support each other throughout her strokes and her dementia and everything else, that she had those kinds of conversations with us, that we knew that this was what she wanted. When it came time to deciding like what needs to happen, that conversation was able to happen a little bit easier. We were able to have that guiding post for making decisions about what needed to happen. I mean, she had her entire funeral sketched out for us, so we didn't make decisions so much as enacted what was going to happen. And so having that ease, I really want everyone else to have that, to be able to have these conversations, which are very normal conversations. Everyone is going to have to go through this at some point in their life. They're going to have to think about this. They're going to have to deal with these issues. And if it can be easier, the better. It shouldn't be something that we run away from.
Right. That's interesting that you talk about funeral planning. Next year, HPGS is going to host April general membership meeting to talk more about advanced healthcare planning, how to do those conversations. So we'd love to have you back, Katie.
That'd be fine. Great.
But there's also Fred Collins, who does funeral planning. So he'll be there talking about the process and how he goes through that with people, and how it's important to plan ahead, especially when you're funeral planning. I can't recite the line exactly, but he says something like, after you pass away, would you rather have your family grieving for your death or planning your funeral? And most likely people answer grieving a death, right? Because if you have everything planned out, like Katie said, all you have to do is enact it. Yeah. So planning is great, but how do you make those conversations is very difficult. Yeah. We do have someone from the audience that chatted in, and he says, in a remarriage situation, there are two sets of children. One set closer to us than the other, of course. There is some animosity directed to me by my natural children, although it is not irreversible. It has been very difficult to discuss with them their interests, but not impossible. Would it be better to have some type of facilitation?
I think I am a big proponent for facilitation, especially if excuse me, especially if you have had some good conversations where you feel that animosity, but that hasn't destroyed your relationship. At that point, facilitation can be exponentially useful, just because it's someone there to help you don't have to concentrate quite so much on moderating emotions and having to take on that role when you're having that conversation to have something be productive. You can let the facilitator take that over a little bit and focus more on the issues at hand. So I think facilitation would be great. But it never hurts to improve sort of skills of like trying to listen and trying to share. It is very difficult, especially with a larger family like that. Making sure that, because there's a lot of perspectives that can go into it that you may not even be aware of, and it's difficult to pull out from people, and to pull out from kids especially. There's a lot of different things that kind of are going on that may inhibit them from being completely honest or completely forthright with you. So I think having a facilitated meeting, having that sort of family conference, I think can be very helpful. Yeah, absolutely. And always remember our K, keep talking. So even if they kind of push away from you or don't want to share things entirely, keep presenting yourself as someone who actually listens. When they say something to you, try to rephrase it and put it back to see if you did understand what they were trying to say. So what, from what you were saying, it seems like, you're frustrated about X, Y, and Z because of A, B. Is that right? Like, did I understand you right? And by trying to like clarify that and make sure that you really do understand what they're saying, it's showing that you're actually listening and that you're actually really trying to understand. So that, you don't have to rely completely on your nonverbals, nodding your head, making eye contact with them, that does go fairly far, but really doing that rephrase back and saying, do I actually understand you? And then if they're like, no, that's not what I meant at all, they're like, oh, okay, well, could you try to explain it to me again? I'm obviously not understanding this, and I really do want to understand. What are you concerned about? Why is this a concern? So having that, so being able to show that to them is always inviting more conversation in. So don't shut down and don't try to be like, well, we're going to schedule a conversation so we don't need to talk about things ever. We're going to have that family conference and that's going to be great. Continue talking, continue having those smaller conversations. I applaud you for keeping on going, because that's really going to be the key to it. Listen with love, listen for understanding, and keep on talking. Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, everyone's journey is different, some more complex than the next, but we're all in this same kind of journey together. Yeah. So having these little tips is very useful. Personally, I like to be listened to, and I find that the people that I listen to don't listen to me. So it's very frustrating because, you give and you get. It's not just you give and you take or whatever, but just knowing that I can offer them to rephrase whatever I just said will give them that heads up to say, hey, I want you to understand what I'm saying. And you can do that by rephrasing what I say. Yeah. Because then they're checking for their understanding, which does in turn show that they're listening, rather than you say your side of the story and the other person tells you what you did right, what you did wrong, and how you can do better. Yeah, that's a very judgmental way of responding to somebody by saying what they did right, what they did wrong, and everything like that. Really sort of, and if you're going to ask somebody to like, I want to make sure that you understand what I'm saying, sort of a thing. Do you really understand what it is that I'm trying to get across, that what I understand? Make sure that when you ask that question that your nonverbals are on point, right? So I want to make sure that you understand what I'm saying. Could you tell me what you understood from what I just said? Or like, what is it that you thought I just said is much different from like, yeah, what do you think I just said? Right. Like, tell it back to me. Like, so trying to make that one non-confrontational, but having it be a check-in. I want to make sure that you're actually understanding me, that I'm being understood, because I might say something wrong.
right? I may say it wrong and you may misinterpret it. And so I don't want that to happen. So how do you understand what I'm trying to get across? And you can actually ask them to repeat what you said, and see if they did actually understand it, if they did actually get what you were trying to say. Because you may be like, this makes complete sense, and so I'm going to say it, and that's going to be great. And then if you do that part where you're checking in, did you understand that? And they could say something that is completely different from what you were trying to get across, and it can catch you by surprise. And so having that check-in is actually really, really helpful. So not only are you rephrasing back to them, it also helps if you take out a little bit of the sting to it. So if they use a word that is really super negative, so calling somebody a slob or calling somebody lazy or something like that, try to take that word out and don't repeat that word, and rephrase it back to them in a way that focuses on behavior rather than any sort of term like that. It helps to get to really the center of it as opposed to blaming or anything like that. It's especially hard if that word is directed at you. It's really easy to kind of take offense and start to become defensive. But if you can really put yourself in power of you don't have power over what they're going to do. You can try to plan for it, but you can't control what they're going to do. But you can control how you act, how you react, and what your nonverbals are, what your pose is, how your face looks, all of that. You have control over it, and you can control yourself in a way that will make the conversation be productive, that you'll be able to take whatever insult got slung at you and kind of put it to the side and say, okay, so it makes you upset when I do this thing, when I leave clothes out, when I don't tell you where I'm going. It makes you upset because then you don't feel like you're included in my life.
That's
something like that.
Interesting. So I'm Mapuana, and I work with children with autism as well as old people with dementia. And it's kind of the same thing where you validate what they're saying, no matter if they're swearing at you, yelling at you, you stay calm and neutral, and you just validate, oh, it looks like you're frustrated. What can I do to help you? And even though they call you names, they tell you you're this, you're that, you don't do this for me, even though you do everything for them, it's communication at the end of the day. And even though they're swearing at you, that communication just means I'm upset right now. Maybe that means leave me alone and come back later.
It could, yeah.
So communication is so important. It's insane. But if anybody else has questions, comments, we do have a few minutes before we wrap up, so please send them in.
And just kind of adding on to that, there are many people when they are upset, when they're really angry, and they say something that is obviously not true. Like, you help this person out all the time. You've given them rides, you've given them money, whatever else, and they're like, you're never there for me. It's obviously not true. You know it. But trying to set them right, all that does is it gives them another brick for them to put against, another step for them to escalate on. So sometimes, even though it's really tough and you really want to just be like, well, objectively, that is not true, it's not going to help emotionally. And so what Mapuana said is absolutely right for anybody in life, really. No matter how put together it seems, you get into an emotional conversation, like all bets are off. They could act like a 3-year-old. They could be, I've seen it at the Mediation Center. Like, I've seen it as an independent facilitator. You get somebody who is like a highly decorated lawyer or a put-together executive, and you get them into something that really gets them emotionally, suddenly they're 3 again, and they're just like pounding doing a tantrum because they're not getting their way. You're like, okay, that happens to everybody. They're never their best self when it comes to emotional arguments and emotional conversations. So being able to take that onto yourself in the sense of like not reacting and not giving them something to fight against, really just being that understanding and compassionate part takes a lot of energy. So one last thing as a follow-up for this conversation, when you get through one of these conversations, reward yourself afterwards. Do something for yourself that's good for you, that is like, yes, congratulations, you made it through that difficult conversation. You prepared yourself, you set it up, even if it didn't turn out exactly the way that you wanted to, you made it through that conversation. Reward yourself. Get yourself a cookie, go get yourself manicure, pedicure, whatever it is. Go out for a round of golf. Whatever it is that gives you joy, do that after one of these conversations. Reward yourself, because it does take a lot of energy, and it does take a lot of strength. So, yeah.
All right. Well, looks like there's no questions for now. Please do send them in. You do have a few more minutes if so. But I wanted to wrap it up with Katie. Thank you so much for being here today, Katie.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I really enjoyed learning from you. Every time I do these webinars, I learn something. So that's why I enjoy being here with the speakers all the time.
Yeah.
But we do hope to have you back in April
Yeah.
at our general membership meeting.
Absolutely.
So if you guys are not a member yet, please do join as a member. And is there anything you wanted to say before we switch seats?
Yeah. If you have any questions about the Kupuna Pono program at the Mediation Center of the Pacific, or about this, the topic on this webinar, please feel free to either email me, which is Katie, Katie, at mediatehawaii.org, or go onto our website, mediatehawaii.org, or call us, 521-6767. We will answer any of your questions. You don't even have to call to start a case. If you're just asking about, is this a good family conferencing thing? We'll be there for you. I will talk you through that. So that's it. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Katie. Oh, okay. So before we go, I wanted to do a quick shout out to, oh, look at my hair, to what's happening next month. We have 2 events coming up. So we have the webinar. This is the general membership meeting. So webinar, we have Fitness After 50. Still working on the flyer, but I'll get that out to you folks by the end of today. Balance and Strength Training with Debbie Kim Morikawa. So she's from Gym Guys. She'll be teaching us a few tips and tricks of what we can do at home to age gracefully. Still in maintaining our independence, decreasing our fall risks. Well, I'm sorry, I'm not kupuna, but speaking for us all. And then in January, also, we have on the 23rd, we're going to be talking about caregiver resources and education. So we have 2 great companies coming. Gary Powell, the executive director of the Caregiver Foundation. He'll be there to speak about the many things they do for caregivers, their support groups. I heard they have a boot camp, but he'll be there. So we'll have him as well as Catholic Charities. So Diane Terada will be joining us as well to talk about what Catholic Charities has in store for us caregivers, whether it be support groups or their workshops. They're doing a lot of workshops on dementia. I believe it's once a month. So look out for that for Catholic Charities. But I do look forward to meeting our members at these general membership meetings. So I hope you can come. If you are an organization, please do bring your brochures, your business cards. It is a time to lay out your resources. Maybe you have a flyer for an upcoming workshop. We will have a resource table. And I'm trying to find this. There you go. So if you have any more questions, Mapuana, you can always email me at hpgsmembers with an S at gmail.com, or head over to www.hpgs.org for more information about our great organization. A lot more education coming next year with our 2020 Biennial Conference. That'll be in September. It's the 9th and 10th. It's that Thursday and Friday in that week, but we hope to see you folks there as well. And please do rejoin as a member. I know many of you watching right now are current members, and I look forward to seeing all of you folks next year. So happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and be safe. I'll see you in January. Bye.